I'm Lisa Mullins. The office of the U.S. Surgeon General has been vacant for more than a year. Dr. Vivek Murthy held the job twice. And now in his civilian life, he continues to sound the alarm about something he first warned of as Surgeon General. Millions of Americans are lonely. They feel their lives lack meaning, and that takes a toll on their health. Murthy is proposing remedies in a Substack newsletter he calls Staying Human, and he's about to launch a podcast by the same name. He tells us staying human is getting tougher all the time.
The challenge is that there are forces all around us that are chipping away at our humanity. There's technology that increasingly is seeking to replace people wholesale, culture that we're living in that often convinces us that we're never enough. Political discourse also is often become so dehumanizing. And finally, we look at the experience of social media. I think about what young people have told me so often over the years, that their use of the platforms involves constant comparison that makes them feel that they're unworthy.
I will say, if you're doing a podcast, you're inviting people to spend more time on their screens, but maybe that is the best way for you to get the word out.
Well, actually, many people listen to podcasts not with screens, but just with a voice in their ear. There's an intimacy, actually, to podcasting, which I really enjoy. But part of this, I'm glad you brought that up, because part of what we have to do now is accelerate the conversation about what we want to protect about our humanity. Because if we don't do that, we will quickly come to a place where suddenly we don't have human presence in our lives. We're being cared for by machines. Our friends have been replaced by machines. And that seemed dystopian 10 years ago. It is already starting to happen today.
Yeah.
That's why it's so urgent we act now.
And can you talk about what you learned about that? Because you had listening tours when you were Surgeon General, and I know you just came back from one across the country. What did you hear, especially from young people, but really from anybody with whom you spoke, about the feeling that their lives are lesser because of how much time they spend, for instance, online?
Well, it's interesting. I hear a concern that the time that they're spending online is often time that doesn't leave them feeling better off. Despite knowing that, they found it hard to reduce the amount of time they were online.
And the remedy for that is what? I mean, I know this is a partial remedy, and the problem is pretty widespread, not just with interactions online. But what are the remedies you're putting forth?
Well, if we truly want to re-anchor in human connection and rebuild a sense of community, there's several things we've got to do, and they include investing in the spaces where people can gather, making transportation easier. But at an individual level, there are steps we can start to take today that actually add up to really big impacts. So taking 5 minutes a day to reach out to someone you care about, ensuring that you do one thing to help someone each day, creating tech-free zones in your day so that you don't have your device with you, but you're focused on something else, whether that's talking to a human being, reading a book, just spending time in solitude reflecting, can be very powerful in a world where we're constantly engaged with the digital environment around us.
What is the science behind this that says if you go out of your way to help somebody through the course of your day, if you spend time away from the phone, away from screens, what kind of evidence do we have that shows us that it's a different kind of reward and a better reward?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. The rewards that you get from likes, from people reposting your content, they give you a temporary and very short-lived gratification. But what's different about building a connection where somebody knows you for who you are, where you can be authentically yourself without feeling the way so many people do online, which is that they have to put on airs, be perfect in some way. Those relationships are extraordinarily protective for our mental and our physical health. They reduce our risk of anxiety and depression. They reduce our risk of heart disease, dementia, and premature death. They're associated with an increase in longevity. Conversely, loneliness is associated with a shortening of lifespan, a mortality impact comparable to smoking and obesity. So we know that that kind of connection really matters. And we know that service in particular is a very powerful antidote to loneliness and actually has its own benefits, both on mental health, but also in physical health.
What's an example of that?
So service can be either formal or informal acts of helping others. So formal could be I volunteer for an organization that's helping folks who are unhoused or that's caring for children who are ill. Informal acts could be that my neighbor, is struggling and is ill, and I stop by and drop off some food, or I recognize a coworker is having a hard time and I offer them some support. When you engage in service, you're reaffirming to yourself that you have value to bring to the world. So service helps restore our sense of self while forging a meaningful connection.
I want to ask you about something I'm guessing that you hear a lot about, that it's just so hard to feel connected, to feel optimistic when there is such antagonism in politics all around us. And violence, school shootings, war, domestic issues, not being able to afford your mortgage, adding to our stress and anxiety. That's a big obstacle to what you're trying to promote.
It's a real challenge, and I hear this often. People look at the world around them and they see problems, they see crises, they see
Everywhere.
conflict. But what it often obscures are the extraordinary good, the extraordinary humanity that actually is present, but doesn't always get a headline, or the algorithm doesn't choose to amplify it on social media. It's not to say we should ignore that pain. That pain is often real.
Hmm.
Those crises are substantial. We have to deal with them. But here's one thing that I have learned in my own life and in my care of patients is that we are capable as human beings of dealing with extraordinary adversity, but only if we are together, if we are connected to one another. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so focused on building social connection and community, because we need it more than ever to take on the big challenges that we're facing.
Thank you so much for talking with us. Dr. Vivek Murthy is a former U.S. Surgeon General. He'll be taping an episode of his new podcast called Staying Human at the WBUR Festival Friday, May 29th. And you can get more information on our 2-day festival at wbur.org/festival. Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
So good to talk to you, Lisa. I look forward to next time.